So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sanjeev Kumar. I lead the Storage Center of Excellence within High-Tech Vertical at TCS. Today, I am going to present on one of the interesting topics called emergence of persistent storage services in Kubernetes. So, why you should attend this session? Actually, it will be an informative type of session. You can say it as container storage interface in a nutshell. Anyone who is willing to contribute into the Kubernetes and wanted to work on the storage features, this is one of the opportunities. They learn what are the opportunities are there in the storage systems and how it can communicate with the Kubernetes environment. There are lots of development opportunities. And third is the overall roadmap of container storage interface and where storage industry stand today with respect to the persistent storage support on the Kubernetes. Seeing this, we'll go on to the agenda slide. So with the evolution of container or virtual machine, industry is adopting heavily on container-based application, where workload portability is the key issue. Most of the enterprise application are stateful, which requires data to be stored on the persistent storage. In this presentation, we are discussing about how containers are using the persistent storage using CSI. We will discuss about the CSI architecture, how third-party storage vendors are writing CSI driver for their storage. We will also discuss how industry is adopting the CSI features for their storage services. Then at the end, we'll deep down into the one of the upcoming features in the CSI container called CSI Volume Health Monitor. We'll discuss its architecture, implementation, and the progress made till now. Now I'll hand over to Pawan Ratwani, who will walk you through the first section of the slides. Over to you, Pawan.
Hello everyone, I am Pawan Ratwani, TCS Storage Center of Excellence. Today I'll take you through the first few sections of this presentation. So we are aware of virtualized environments where applications run on virtual machines. It was a great technological advancement as we were able to efficiently utilize hardware resources. We were able to run applications in isolated environments. As the application architecture continued to change, mainly due to advancements in cloud technology, it was found that virtual machines may not be the best suitable for many workloads, which require frequent scaling up and down with maximum uptime. Then the application container technology started to become popular. Containers are a method of building, packaging, and deploying software. They are similar to, but not the same thing as virtual machines, VMs, which we can call. One of the primary difference is that containers are isolated or abstracted away from the underlying operating system and infrastructure that they run on. Because of this, containers offer many benefits like portability. They can be easily moved in the cloud environment as they are built to perform, as they are built to be platform independent. Containers are lightweight in nature as it contains only the application and relevant libraries. At the same time, containers consume less resources and hence provide better resource utilization as compared to VMs. Also, many containers can be run on a single machine at the same time, which can even be a virtual machine. So, not spending too much time on this part, I will quickly move to the next slide. I assume that most of all are aware of all this. So let's do the next slide. So this is about Kubernetes. Now, since containers are lightweight and ephemeral by nature, running them in production can quickly become a massive effort, particularly when paired with microservices, which typically each run in their own containers. So a containerized application might translate into operating hundreds of containers, especially when building and operating any large-scale system. So this can introduce significant complexity if managed manually. So container orchestration simplifies operations, which is most important benefit of CO, that is a container orchestrator. So, and Kubernetes is a popular open source platform for container orchestration. So it's one of the most, not one of the most, it's the most popular platform for container orchestration. So it enables developers to easily build containerized application and services, as well as scale, schedule, and monitor those containers. While there are other options for container orchestration, such as Apache Mesos, Docker Swarm, Kubernetes has become the industry standard. Kubernetes provides extensive container capabilities, dynamic contributor community, widespread availability of Kubernetes tools. Kubernetes follows a client-server architecture, as we can see in this diagram. It has a master node and a worker node, and more than one worker node. So the master node consists of various components, including Kube API server, etcd, storage, Kube controller manager, Kube scheduler. Node components include kubelet, Kube proxy on top of the container engine. So let's talk a little bit about these components. So Kube API server is a component of the Kubernetes control plane that exposes the Kubernetes API. The API server is front end for the Kubernetes control plane. etcd is consistent and highly available key value store used as Kubernetes backing store for all cluster data. Kube scheduler, it watches for newly created pods with no assigned node and selects a node for them to run. Kube controller manager runs controller processes like node controller, job controller, endpoint controller, service controller, service account controller. Then we have kubelet, which is an agent that runs on each node in the cluster. It makes sure that containers are running in the pod. Kube proxy, it is a network proxy that runs on each node in the cluster, and it is responsible for maintaining network rules on nodes. And then we have container runtime. So this is the software that is responsible for running containers. Kubernetes supports several container runtimes like Docker, Containerd. Okay. So in addition to that, we can have some optional things like some add-ons, which are like DNS, dashboard, container resource monitoring, etc. So these are mainly used to implement cluster level features. So now we'll talk about the stateful and stateless applications and their relevance here. So the state of an application is its condition at a given moment of time. Whether something is stateful or stateless, that depends on how long the state of interaction with it is being recorded and how that information needs to be stored. In stateless application, there is no stored knowledge of or reference to past transaction. Each transaction is made from scratch for the first time. Stateless applications provide one service or function. We can have a crude example of stateless application as a calculator. So this always starts from zero and has no information about previous transaction. Another example could be online search. So when we go to Google, we type our question and hit enter. So if the transaction is interrupted or closed accordingly, then we just start a new transaction. And other example in the practical world of application are like web servers. So we have shown a couple. And whereas the stateful applications are performed with the context of a previous transaction. And current transaction may also affect the, it may also get affected by what happened during previous transaction. So all the transactions are dependent on previous transaction and connected. For these reasons, stateful apps use the same servers each time they process a request from a user. Because if the request goes to another user, that request and the another server may not have a context available. So it is essential. Okay. So what happens in a stateful transaction is interrupted, the context and history which have been stored, so you can pick up where you left off. Okay. stateful applications generally involve some database like Cassandra, MongoDB, MySQL, and processes read write to it. Most of the applications with modern workloads like AI, ML, DevOps are stateful and they require persistent storage as well. So it's now why it is relevant. So as cloud computing grew in popularity, so too has containerization of applications, whether stateful or stateless. As we have just discussed, so containers are units of code for an application that are packaged up together with their libraries and dependencies. Originally, containers were built to be stateless, as this suited their portable and flexible nature. But as containers have come into more widespread use, existing stateful apps are being containerized these days. So that has given them the flexibility and speed of using containers, but with the storage and context of statefulness. Now we'll talk about what persistent storage is and how that is made available to the container. So persistent storage in standard terms is any data storage device that retains data after power to that device is shut off. So it is also sometimes referred as a non-volatile storage. In containerization world, persistent storage refers to storage volumes usually associated with a stateful application such as databases. So that remains available beyond life of individual container. Because we know containers are ephemeral in nature. So one container goes down, another quickly comes up. Now, if the context of the storage is not available to the new container, then that availability of storage is that available storage cannot be called as a persistent storage tool, because the new container which has just spawned will not be able to connect to the underlying storage. Okay. So some application like in databases, data must persist beyond life of containers, so that becomes essential. Awareness of storage persistent arise recently due to rapid adoption of Docker containers for developing, building, and deploying application. Even though we have other options, but Docker is the most popular one these days. Now, so managing storage is a distinct problem from managing compute instances. So the persistent volume subsystem provides an API for users and administrators that abstracts details of how storage is provided from how it is consumed. Persistent volume is a piece of storage in the cluster that has been provisioned by an administrator, or it can be dynamically provisioned using concept called storage classes. So, so basically, it is a resource in the cluster, like a node resource we have in the cluster. So PVs are nothing but the volume plugins, like volumes, but have a life cycle which is independent of individual pod that uses the PV. Now, as we can see in the example YAML file, each persistent volume contains a spec field. So, which is the specification and the status of the volume where that persistent volume talks to. So, generally, PV will have a specific storage capacity. So, this is set using the PV's capacity attribute. Okay. So, now a persistent volume can be mounted on a host in any way, supported by the resource provider. And to mount it, we can have more than one access modes, like read-write ones. So in this access mode, the volume can be mounted as read-write by a single node. Then another mode is read-only many. In this, the volume can be mounted read-only by many nodes. The third is read-write many. In this, a volume can be mounted as read-write by many nodes. Okay, some of the supported volume, as we can see here, are like AWS, EBS, Elastic Storage, Azure Disk, Azure File, Google Google Cloud Engine, Persistent Disk, then Ceph file system, Portworx, etc. Moving on to Next slide. So here we can see PVC. So PVC, that means a persistent volume claim. So it is a, as name suggests, so it is a claim, it is a request for storage by a user. Okay. So when a user needs PV, it will use PVC to claim that. It is similar to a pod. So pods consume node resources, whereas PVCs consume PV resources. PV as in persistent volume. So pods can request specific levels of resources like CPU, memory, and claims can request specific size and access modes we just spoke about. So each PVC will contain a spec and a status. So once again, this will be the specification and status of the claim. So as we can see in the diagram, so how PVC is talking to persistent volume. So if we map through the PVC.YAML, which is shown on the right side, at the bottom, the storage capacity is mentioned 3 gigabits. Now, this PVC is claiming the 3 gigabit into the persistent volume pool, which has more than one options in addition to 3 gigabit of persistent volume. Moving on, so storage class. So cluster administrator need to be able to offer a variety of persistent volumes that differ in more ways than size and access modes, without exposing users to the details of how those volumes are implemented. Okay, and for these needs, there is a resource called storage class. Okay, storage class provides a way for administrators to describe the classes of storage they offer. Okay, so basically, we can create different classes of storage. So by defining it into different kind of storage class. Now, the kind of storage is needed, so accordingly we can pick up the storage class. So now, why? So because different classes might map to quality of service levels. Okay, so now each storage class contains the field provisioner, parameters, reclaim policy. Now these fields are used when a persistent volume belonging to the class needs to be dynamically provisioned. Okay. And each storage class has a provisioner. So this provisioner determines that what volume plugin is used for provisioning PV. So in this example, we are using AWS EPS volume plugin. Okay, we can use any other provisioning volume plugin. Okay. So that can be one of the differentiator in different storage classes. So persistent volumes can be configured to be expandable. So this feature, when set to true, allows the user to resize the volume also by editing the corresponding PVC object. Volume binding mode is there. So this field controls when volume binding and dynamic provisioning should occur. So here in this example, we have immediate. So in this volume binding mode and dynamic provision will occur once the persistent volume claim is created. So as soon as the claim is created, so immediately the binding will happen. Okay, so then there are other modes like in which the binding waits until user starts to write the data. The time the volume is created. Now, initially, what happened that all volume plugins were in-tree. So, what is in-tree? So, in-tree meaning they were built, linked, compiled, and shipped with the core Kubernetes binaries. And so they extend the core Kubernetes APIs also. So that means that adding a new storage system to Kubernetes required checking code into the core Kubernetes code posture. So now, so these were basically some of the challenges in adoption of in-tree plugins, because in-tree volume plugins make kind of volume plugin development tightly coupled and dependent upon Kubernetes releases, so which is a deal breaker. Now, because the plugins are for storage, right? And Kubernetes code is different. Now, if storage code is dependent on the Kubernetes code and vice versa, then it is very difficult to manage. In-tree plugins make Kubernetes developers or community responsible for testing and maintaining all volume plugins, so which becomes nearly impossible. Now, in-tree volume plugin also allow bugs in volume plugins to crash critical Kubernetes components instead of just the plugin. Now, you can assume a scenario when we are connecting one kind of storage to Kubernetes environment, and it has a bug. That plugin part has a bug, and it crashes entire Kubernetes environment. So that is unacceptable. Okay, for these reasons, the Kubernetes storage SIG choose to stop accepting new in-tree volume plugins and instead require new volume plugins to be developed. So these plugins, the new concept came, which was called out of tree. So out of tree volume plugins include container storage interface and flex volume. So now these plugins enable storage vendors to create custom storage plugins without adding their plugin source code to the Kubernetes repository. Now, out of tree volume plugins are developed independently of the Kubernetes code. So the drawbacks which I just mentioned regarding in-tree were not applicable on out of tree. Then they started developing flex volume, but flex volume also had a couple of drawbacks, so it didn't work enough. Out of tree, so what happened that CSI based storage plugin mechanism, so that became the standard solution for future third-party Kubernetes storage plugins. Moving ahead to CSI. So what is CSI? So CSI is an abbreviation of a container storage interface. So it is a specification. So it defines a common set of APIs for all interaction between storage vendors and the container orchestration platforms. So as I mentioned earlier, so there are multiple container orchestration platforms apart from Kubernetes. So what about CSI? So it is a result of a close collaboration among representatives from CEOs like Kubernetes, Cloud Foundry, Docker Swarm, and Mesos communities. So the primary goal of CSI is to allow storage vendors to write one plugin that works with all container orchestration platforms. So this specification defines an interface along with the minimum operational and packaging recommendations for a storage provider, SP, to implement a CSI compatible plugin. Now, so the interface declares the RPCs. So, okay, and so that a plugin must expose this. So that becomes a primary focus of CSI specification. So this specification is mainly relying on the different RPC. So whenever a storage provider has to connect its storage to Kubernetes environment, it has to implement that using the RPC standards which is given. Okay. Now the primary focus of this specification is on the protocol between a CEO and the plugin. How CEO will talk to the plugin. Okay. Now, so that made it possible to ship across CEO compatible plugins for a variety of deployment architectures. Now, as we can see in the diagram, the plugins runs on all nodes in the cluster. Okay, a centralized controller plugin is available on the CEO master host, and then node plugin will be available on all of the CEO nodes. Okay. So CEO will interact with the plugin through RPC calls. So gRPC mainly. So each storage provider must provide two plugins, node plugin and controller plugin. Node plugin is a gRPC endpoint serving CSI RPCs that must be run on the node whereupon an SP provision volume will be published. Okay, and whereas in controller plugin, gRPC endpoint serving CSI RPCs that will be run anywhere. Okay. Now, what kind of RPCs we have? So mainly there are three sets of RPC which are essential. So one is identity service, as the name suggests. So identity service RPC allows CEO to query a plugin for capabilities and other metadata. So this identity service must run on controller and node plugin all. Okay, then controller service. So controller service plugin must implement this sets of RPCs if it needs to perform volume related operations primarily. Okay, and in node service, so node plugin must implement a set of RPCs. That these RPCs should be called by the CEO when a workload that wants to use the specified volume is scheduled on the specified node for the first time. Okay, we'll see the a deep level of understanding. We'll talk about all this in upcoming slides.
Okay, here if you can see the deployment architecture of the CSI for the Kubernetes. Other than the core Kubernetes services, we can see that the CSI drivers services running on the nodes. Let's see the main components. So if you will see, one is the CSI controller pod, and second is the CSI node pods. So the main function of the CSI controller driver is to provide management and operations of the storage resources and the volume. It is recommended in the Kubernetes to deploy it as a single instance pod, and only one controller instance is running as a storage plugin. So CSI sidecar container communicates with the master node. Sidecar container and the storage driver container communicates through the gRPC protocol. The sidecar container calls the CSI driver container through the socket, and the CSI driver container is responsible for a specific storage volume operation. If you will see inside the sidecar container, services are running like attacher, provisioner, provider, snapshotter, and resizer. Example of these services, like if you'll see attacher, it monitors changes to the volume attachment resources object, triggers the controller publish and controller unpublish operation against the CSI endpoints. For example, if you'll take the provisioner, it monitors the change to the persistent volume claim resources object, trigger the create volume or delete volume operations against the CSI endpoints. And if you see, other than this container, there is another container, CSI driver, storage driver container. This is being provided by the third-party storage provider. It needs to implement these interfaces like attacher, provisioner. On the other side, if you will see both the nodes, almost you are looking at the identical. So that is the CSI node. The main function of CSI node is to manage and manipulate volume on the nodes in the Kubernetes. It is recommended to deploy it as a pod on each node. And the pod, what should it contain? It will contain two things. So one is the sidecar container, node driver registrar that communicates with the kubelets, whose main function is to register the storage driver into the kubelets. And second one is the CSI driver storage driver container provided by the third-party storage provider, receives calls from the kubelet and implement a series of the node related to the CSI interface, such as node publish volume interface or node unpublished volume interface. So now this architecture has been given and explained. So what Kubernetes is saying that if you have to develop your CSI driver for your storage, they will give you the ready-made test also. So while developing a CSI driver for storage system, Kubernetes has given a sample host part driver also. Just to write as a sample driver they have given, so that you can take a reference and write your own driver, along with the test suits which are compliant to the CSI specification. One of the test suit is sanity test suit, sometimes called as unit testing test suit also. It's written in the Go language, which calls the gRPC method to check the critical function supported by the CSI driver. Sanity test suits connects to the socket to the CSI driver. As name suggests, this test suite checks the critical CSI driver function which needs to be passed to run the minimal functionality of the CSI driver. Once sanity test is passed, there is another test suite provided by Kubernetes called end-to-end test suite, which runs as a container outside the Kubernetes along with the CSI driver. It will also its functionality is to do the end-to-end testing of the Kubernetes, of the your CSI driver. But it goes from top of the application. From the application, you have to this application as an test suite, end-to-end functional test suite. It will call your Kubernetes API. Kubernetes API will call your this sidecar container or third-party storage driver. So that means across the stack it will go and it will test end-to-end as an user. So this is the basic difference between these two. One is working as a sanity test or at a unit test level, and second is working across the stack for the Kubernetes. If we'll move on to the next slide, you will see that there are a storage as we see that storage technology is pretty mature. And when we are migrating from our workload from virtual machines to the container, we want the support for all the storage features supported by Kubernetes or within the Kubernetes. Some of the critical features that are listed here are the manageability, or you will say this health monitoring, encryption, volume limits, capacity management, or you see the configurations kind of things, raw block access, resizing, or dynamic provisioning. Other data protection features like backup, disaster recovery, replication, snapshots, those kinds of features. So these are a very mature feature, and whenever we are going to use our workload or migrating our workload from either VM to container, we want all these features of the storage technologies to be supported by that particular environment. So we'll just now discuss in the next slide what CSI delivers. So we try to sketch some map saying that what are the features that CSI has supported till now in the Kubernetes environment. Example, volume provisioning, topology, raw block volume, cloning. Those are the GA releases. Some of the beta feature releases which already exists are volume expansion or snapshot and restore. And on the right hand side, if you'll see, these are the roadmap for 2021. That means the feature which are about to come into the alpha release in the next 2021 or their 1.1 release. So example, if you'll see that container object storage interface, this is one of the feature which has not been supported till now. So till now, container storage interface CSI specification, it's only supports for the file-based and block-based storage. But when we see this object-based storage, these are the major portion of these object-based storage are being used on the cloud and cloud-related services. And to support this, they have provided the bucket API in the Kubernetes, and they are very in the very initial phase in the development. Few 4 APIs they have already implemented, like create bucket, delete bucket, grant access, and revoke access, just to use the object storage in the standard manner from your application in the Kubernetes. This release 1.21, it will come into the alpha release. Now in the next slide, if you'll see what CSI implementation has been done by the storage service provider. This is one of the comparative study that we have done through the CSI driver. So multiple storage vendors like AWS or Azure Disk or open source Ceph block storage. These are the CSI drivers that has been implementing these kinds of services like volume provisioning, topology, raw block volume, or volume snapshot, or volume expansion. You can see some of the blanks things where they say that the storage capacity tracking or volume health monitoring or token request. So these kinds of feature has not been implemented because either these features are in the beta release or in the alpha release in the CSI driver itself. So it's just for a glance saying that within the industry, these kinds of CSI storage, sample CSI storage drivers available, and what kind of features are currently being supported, and what are the features remaining. Just a thing. In the next slide, if you'll see, this is the slide where we are saying that we are trying to depict the major vendor working across the stack to support the container workload. If you'll see on the bottom, major player providing the on-prem and cloud storage services for Kubernetes workload using the CSI interface. So multiple vendors logo has been placed here. Using the CSI, major Kubernetes, if you see that major commercial Kubernetes vendors like Google Kubernetes Engine, Amazon Elasticsearch, Elastic Kubernetes Services, Azure Kubernetes Services, Red Hat OpenShift, these kinds of commercial Kubernetes engine or container orchestration engine vendors are there who are providing. GKE was the first commercial version. And on top, if you will see the data protection vendors providing the services for the backup, restore, snapshot for the container workload using the CSI. Example, VM. On the left hand side, some of the top vendor providing the data management platform for container workload like NetApp Astra, Portworx by Pure Storage, and Dell EMC, Dell Carvi. This project is in the very initial stage. Using these data management platform, one can execute critical data storage services like data protection, DR, data migration across cloud, or data security, automated capacity management for the container application. So this slide actually it tells that how overall storage vendors are coming, what kind of services they are providing at each layer, and what kind of products actually we have in the market. So now in the next slide, we'll go and do the deep dive of one of the features called Volume Health Monitor, as we suggest earlier. There are storage is a very mature technology, and lots of features are already implemented for VMs and especially in the storage, and has been supported by different environments like virtual machines. For the Kubernetes environment, this feature has not been supported till now. It will come into the alpha release 1.21, and so we'll just see that why there is a need for this volume health monitor. So once your volume has been claimed by a pod in terms of the PVC, persistent volume claim, then if some problem persists, then there is no any mechanism through which you will get to know that there is a problem on your uh, storage volume, persistent volume. So that problems we cannot identify, and once problem persists, we have to go dig down deep and we have to debug, and it's a very tedious job. A kind of volume failure can be volume runs out of the capacity, or volume was deleted by accident outside of the Kubernetes services, or some kind of disk failure. Or suppose your volume is already mounted, then some read write IO error has come, file system on the volume is corrupted, or volume unmounted by accident. So what we'll do? Solution to this problem is CSI Volume Health Monitor. It's a combination of the two modules called External Volume Health Monitor Controller and External Health Monitor Agent, which is now integrated into the Kubernetes kubelets. I'll explain in details about the both of the component in the next slide. If you will see the diagram, so this external volume health monitor controller is deployed as a sidecar container together with the CSI controller driver. It has two tasks. One task is checks the node failure. Second task is check the CSI volume health. Controller calls the gRPC function called to the CSI driver to check the health of the persistent volume. If volume health is abnormal, controller failure notification event will be sent to the persistent volume claim, and the PVC will inform to all the pods on the same node who has claimed that volume. Similarly, the node failure controller will inform to the PVC. Currently, volume health monitor reports events and log for the volume health failure. User has to fix this error. In future Kubernetes, it will be automatically reconciled. If we'll see on the next slide the kubelets, so here agent module has been integrated with the kubelets. Kubelet basic function was to collect the volume status and the CSI node plugin from the CSI node plugin. After integrating the code, the kubelets also checks the volume mounting condition and the log elements of the pod if volume is abnormal. So the simple things actually it does. We have just put an additional thing saying that you have to check the mounting of or health of that volume in the kubelets also. In the next slide, we are giving the overall architecture of the volume health monitor. Now this overall architecture of the volume health monitor. On the left hand side, you see that Kubernetes worker node. On the worker node, you have the kubelets and the pods and container within that pods. On the right hand side, Kubernetes sidecar container is running where volume health controller is running along with the modules like provisioner, external volume health monitor. We'll call the list volume function within the CSI driver to check the volume health. If health is abnormal, controller will raise the failure event to the PVC and PVC inform to the pod for the same. Kubelets checks the volume steps and mounting of the volume. If volume is unmounted or unhealthy volume, an event will be raised to the pod object using the PVC. If multiple pods are running using the same PVC, it will raise the failure event to all the pods. So this was the brief architecture of the upcoming CSI feature of the volume health monitor. There are vendors who has already implemented that kind of features like volume health monitoring functionality into their commercial Kubernetes version. Example, VMware Tanzu. And TCS is also working on the development of Kubernetes environment and developing the proprietary application for the Kubernetes customers. That's it from our side. Thank you.